I think this is a huge question. I'm just going to sort of talk it through as I'm thinking about it. So, what would have to change to eradicate or reduce victim blaming? So, just I think the answer to that is it would have to it would cause complete cultural shift. The first thing that comes to my mind would be the shift in media reporting and the way we talk about sexual violence, like publicly in the public sphere. That would mean, you know, and I'm not a fan of censorship. I really aren't. I actually believe in complete freedom of speech. But there would have to be something that changed in the headlines, in the way that sexual violence was reported, the way that victims were just discredited, and their backgrounds, their personality, their sex lives, everything is just dragged up, and sort of they're made to look like liars, like they're crazy, like, you know, like they're in it for the money, like all of these horrible things that get said about victims of abuse and violence. So I do believe that would have to change. And I guess what I mean about censorship is that I don't think there's anything to gain by just banning people from talking about things. I think that when very difficult and horrible or offensive things are being said, they need to be aired, because otherwise you can't challenge them. So there's no point in censoring it or banning it. But that would mean that media outlets would have to sign up to something morally or ethically to say, we have decided we won't do this anymore. And when we report cases of trafficking or sexual violence or child sexual abuse or child sexual exploitation, we're going to make sure our language is neutral, and we're going to make sure that we do not make assumptions about the victim, or that we don't use offensive or what's the best way of putting it? Almost like minimizing language. An example of this is I've got a really old YouTube video from a few years ago where I decided to explore how the media talked about female sex offenders. And I did it live. So I had my iPad in front of me, and I was sort of going, oh, right, oh, this one says this. And I was reading things out from different newspapers. And there's a bit in that video where I like pause and go like this. And that's because at the bottom of one of the stories in the media, one of the news outlets had ranked female sex offenders by the hair colour. And you could click on them and it would take you to stories about women who had sexually abused kids based on whether they were a brunette, a redhead or a blonde. And I remember, I actually just go silent on the video, and I'm just like, what the hell? I'd never seen it before, I'd never noticed it before. I couldn't believe someone would do it. And then I'm thinking, who the hell sits there and makes hyperlinks and then collects articles and puts them like, right, oh, she's a brunette sex offender, oh, she's got blonde hair, she's in that one, you know, or like, oh, this teacher's been abusing 10-year-old boys. Yeah, but what colour's her hair? You know, that sort of stuff. At some point, surely we've got to get past that, like this sexualization of sexual abuse, really, of offending. So I would really hope the media shifts. I know that people are already doing work around that. I think it's a bloody long road. I think it'll be hard, but I think it'll be worth it. I then think, as an extension of, you know, reporting and media, we would have to look at the way we're glorifying rape and sexual violence in media. So I mean, like films, soaps, dramas, CSI dramas, you know, there's all sorts. I don't really want to name them particularly because I don't fancy a lawsuit, but you know, there's been particular very popular drama series, and there's been films that have been released in the last couple of years that they just contain so much glorified rape of women specifically, and teenage girls, that you just think, who's making this stuff? Why is there so much rape in this? And they say, oh, well, you know, it's historically accurate, or, well, that was part of the story. What? a woman being raped 6 times in 90 minutes. I said, like, this, that has to stop, you know? I don't like the way that abuse and rape is positioned in the media as almost like it's what women grow from. That you're like, she becomes a stronger person after she was raped. I hate that. That sort of stuff would need to change if we were going to challenge victim blaming, because all of these things are feeding into the normalisation and minimisation of sexual violence against women. Then you'd have to look at the criminal justice system. That would be a big task, because the system's so adversarial, and also it's like, I tweeted about it ages ago, I can't remember, and I was just in a mood about something, because I used to work in the criminal justice system as a manager in victim services and witness services, and I can't remember why I was in a mood about it. I was thinking about some stuff, and I tweeted, it's called the criminal justice system, not the victim justice system. And it was because I was thinking about how many extra rights, access to services, access to legal support, preparation, access to statements, being able to sort of create your defence based on lots of different things. Whereas a victim of sexual violence gets very, very little in that way. So it's quite common for victims of sexual violence to never meet their prosecutor until the day. Sometimes a day before, sometimes 10 minutes before the trial starts. That was quite common when I was working there. CPS would come in and go, hi, you know, my name's Jessica, I'm going to be your prosecutor. This is my colleague, you know, we're going to be in the room. We'll be on this particular bit. So when I ask you questions, that's me, you know, go through your statement. And you just sort of got victims going, they've got no idea what's going on. Whereas if you contrast that with the defence, that defence solicitor has potentially met their client a number of times, has spent time talking through what that defence might look like, what different mitigating factors there might be, how to work around different evidence. So if you consider how prepped an offender might be, or a set of an offenders might be, versus a victim who's being represented by our government, our Crown Prosecution Service, and yet their CPS prosecutor just rocked up at 9:10. It's that I would want looking at. I also think, and there's been a lot of work around this, I've written about it, University of Bedfordshire have written about it, lots of forensic psychologists have written about the way that the criminal justice system in Britain itself actually has very good policies and procedures, it's just that they don't get followed. So we've got the Witness Charter, we've got the Victims Code, and they're very strong pieces of work, and they set out all of the rights that victims and witnesses have. Whether they actually get them is a whole other ball game. And sometimes you can be, the amount of times I would find myself arguing in one of my courts, because I had 5 at the time, and like there was a couple of them that were notorious for not putting special measures in, or notorious for claiming that they didn't know that someone needed a live link, or claiming that they didn't know that screens were available to the victim. And you just, every morning it was the same argument that, you know, why hasn't this application been put in, or why has the application been ignored, or why isn't the court prepared for this? And that's awful. Criminal justice system would really have to, it would possibly need restructuring almost in a way. What else would need to change? I would like to see sexism and misogyny actively challenged from very young ages. And I mean, I've got small children, and you can challenge it from a really young age. It's not scary, it's really easy to do. You know, if you can start really small, like saying, if your kid comes in and says, oh, you hit like a girl, that's the beginning of sexism. That's where that starts. If your 4-year-old is coming out with that, where do you think they're going to be in 10 years' time? Like, it always... So one of my sons once, we were driving along the road, and he just became really hysterical and was sort of like going, oh my God, did you just see that? Oh my God, did you see that? And I was like, what did we see? And he said to me, it was a woman. I was like, right, driving a truck. I remember driving and I can't look back at him and I'm thinking, why is that? He's so animated at this point. Oh my god. And I couldn't turn around because I was driving. I remember thinking, he doesn't think women can drive a truck. I was like, oh no. So I was driving along and I says to him, yeah, women can drive trucks. That's not that uncommon. And I remember from behind me he went, women cannot drive a truck, mummy. And it's that sort of, you think, where has that come from? Because that didn't come from me. I've never taught him anything like that. And you start looking, is it nursery? Is it primary school? Is it other parents or carers? Is it family? Is it friends? Where is this coming from? And so I see victim blaming as a very high sort of level issue, whereas sexism and misogyny is everywhere and it's global. And it's having a massive impact. So if you can't do the bottom stuff, if you can't do the basics, how are you ever going to get people to a psychological level where they can challenge victim blaming of women and girls? So I would love to see something that started challenging children around that from a really early age, where it was just unacceptable to say those things, but again, not in a censorship way, in a challenge way. So not to just go to children, you can't say that, you're not allowed to say that about girls. I would prefer active challenge, examples to the contrary, telling them stories about, women who do drive trucks and things like that, so that they're brought up thinking, if someone did come out with something very sexist or misogynistic, they'd sort of go, whoa, well, what about women who do this? Or what about that? And that, at the moment, we really don't have that. And actually, feminists are getting a lot of the brunt of the anger over them being the person that picks up that slack. So it'll be a feminist or an activist or a campaigner or someone else that says, excuse me, no, actually that's wrong, women can do this, or no, don't talk about girls like that, or that's completely inappropriate. But imagine how much more powerful it would be if everybody just did that, if it got to the point where it was just not accepted to say that anymore, and you would get challenged on it actively in front of people, and that wasn't seen as, all the feminists are getting, mardy about sexism and misogyny. What if everybody got mardy about it? Maybe victim blaming wouldn't be so prevalent then. So today I was giving a speech and a man came up to me at the end and he said, I was reading all your rape myths and the victim blaming on the screen. And he was like, my friends talk like that all the time. He says, I started thinking, God, like my peers, my friends are always saying things like, oh, all women lie about rape, or, it's not really rape if you haven't got a weapon and things like that. If she hasn't got injuries and bruises, she's probably lying. He was sort of saying, well, they always say things like that. And he said to me, is that because we're men? Like, why do you think that they hold those views? He was like, I've never come to anything like this before, and I've never had this laid bare to me. And I said to him, no, for a start, it's not just men that hold these views, women hold these views as well. It's not a man thing to believe in rape myths, it's really common in women. But he was right, he had never been to anything like that before, he'd never heard anyone like me speak. His peers definitely hadn't ever heard anyone like me speak. So if there's no counter narrative to that, if there's no opportunity to listen to someone like me or like a rape charity or another activist or anyone really, if that's not widely available to challenge the constant victim blaming narrative, it's going to remain exactly the same. There's so many things that we could do to change. It just sort of, sometimes even for me, and this is what I do for a job, it feels like insurmountable. It sort of feels like, if someone said to me, could we achieve this in like my lifetime or what's left of my lifetime, I would honestly probably say no. Could we achieve it in a few generations? Yeah, I reckon we could.